The sound of my husband's voice still echoes in my head like a broken record. "You take the kid. I'm done." Those 6 words. 6 fucking words. That shattered my entire world on a random Tuesday morning in our kitchen in suburban Phoenix. I'm standing there in my old bathrobe, coffee mug halfway to my lips, watching the man I'd loved for 12 years pack his designer suitcase like he's checking out of some cheap motel. My name is Rebecca Hayes, and I thought I knew my life. Hell, I thought I knew my husband, Derek. We had this picture-perfect setup, nice house in Scottsdale, white picket fence, golden retriever named Max, and our beautiful 8-year-old son, Ethan. Derek was this hotshot real estate developer, always closing deals, always bringing home the bacon. I was the stay-at-home mom, PTA president, the works. You know the drill. But that Tuesday morning, everything I thought I knew got flushed down the toilet faster than you could say midlife crisis. Hey everyone, if this story is hitting you in the feels already, smash that like button, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from, and don't forget to follow for more jaw-dropping true stories like this one. Trust me, you're gonna want to stick around for what happens next. "Derek, what the hell are you talking about?" I remember asking, my voice cracking like I'm some teenager getting dumped at prom. But he didn't even look at me, just kept folding his precious golf shirts like nothing happened. "I'm done playing house, Becca. Done pretending this whole suburban mom and dad thing works for me." He finally turned around, and I swear to God, it was like looking at a stranger. This wasn't the guy who cried when Ethan took his first steps. This wasn't the man who promised me forever at that little chapel in Vegas 13 years ago. "What about Ethan?" I whispered, because honestly, that's all I could think about. Our little boy was upstairs getting ready for school, probably brushing his teeth and singing that stupid song from that Disney movie he's obsessed with. Derek's face went cold, colder than I'd ever seen it. "That's your problem now. I never wanted kids anyway. You know that." And there it was, the knife, twisted right in my heart. Because yeah, I did know that. Derek had made it crystal clear when we were dating that kids weren't in his life plan. But then I got pregnant, and he seemed so happy. He painted the nursery, picked out names, bought tiny little baseball outfits. Was it all just an act? "You seemed pretty damn excited when I was pregnant," I shot back, my mama bear instincts kicking in hard. I was young and stupid, thought I could change, thought I could be the family man. But I can't keep living this lie, Becca. I'm suffocating here. The worst part? As he's telling me our entire marriage was a sham, I could hear Ethan's little footsteps upstairs, probably looking for his favorite Pokemon backpack. My baby had no clue his world was about to get turned upside down. "So what? You're just gonna bail? Leave us with nothing?" My hands were shaking now, coffee mug forgotten on the counter. "You'll be fine. You're smart. You'll figure it out. And hey, maybe now you can finally lose that baby weight you're always complaining about." I'm not kidding. He actually said that. After 8 years of marriage, after I gave him a son, after I put my career on hold to support his dreams, this man had the audacity to take a shot at my postpartum body that never quite bounced back. That's when something inside me snapped. Not the crying, begging, "Please don't leave us," kind of snap. No, this was different. This was the moment Rebecca Hayes decided she wasn't going down without a fight. "Fine," I said, way calmer than I felt. "But if you think you're just gonna walk away scot-free, you've got another thing coming." Derek laughed, actually laughed, as he zipped up his suitcase. "What are you gonna do, Becca? Take me to court? Good luck with that. I know every lawyer in this town, and trust me, they're all on my payroll." He grabbed his keys from the hook by the door, the same hook where Ethan hangs his little jacket every day after school. "I'll send for the rest of my stuff. Don't make this harder than it has to be." And just like that, he was gone. 12 years of marriage, reduced to the sound of his BMW pulling out of our driveway for the last time. I stood there in my kitchen, surrounded by the remnants of the life we'd built together. Ethan's cereal bowl still sitting in the sink, Derek's coffee cup with that stupid world's best dad print that Ethan made him last Father's Day, family photos on the refrigerator that suddenly felt like evidence of a crime. "Mom, where's Dad going with his suitcase?" I turned around to see my little boy standing in the doorway, backpack on, hair still messy from sleep, those big brown eyes that looked just like his father's staring up at me with pure confusion. And that's when I realized this wasn't just about me anymore. This was about protecting my son from the kind of man who could just throw away his family like yesterday's garbage. Derek thought he knew every lawyer in town. Well, he was about to find out he didn't know his wife at all. Little did I know, The real game changer was going to come from the most unexpected source: my 8-year-old son and his habit of playing with Daddy's phone when Derek thought no one was looking. 3 weeks after Derek walked out on us, I was drowning. Not literally, but you know what I mean. Bills were piling up faster than laundry. And let me tell you, that's saying something with an 8-year-old boy who thinks clean clothes are optional. I was sitting at our kitchen table, well, my kitchen table now, surrounded by papers that might as well have been written in ancient Greek: mortgage statements, credit card bills, legal documents from Derek's fancy attorney that basically said, "You're screwed, lady." The house that once felt like our sanctuary now felt like a prison I couldn't afford to escape from. Ethan was in the living room, supposedly doing homework, but I could hear him playing some game on his tablet. Poor kid didn't really understand what was happening. He kept asking when Daddy was coming home, and I kept making up excuses that sounded lame even to my own ears. "Mom, can I have a snack?" Ethan wandered into the kitchen, dragging his favorite stuffed dinosaur behind him. "Sure, baby. Grab some goldfish from the pantry." I didn't even look up from the stack of legal nonsense I was trying to decipher. That's when I heard it. Derek's ringtone. That stupid song from Top Gun that he thought made him sound cool. My heart did this weird flip, because for a split second, I thought maybe he was calling to apologize, to say he'd made a horrible mistake, but the sound was coming from Ethan. "Sweetie, where did you get that phone?" Ethan froze like a deer in headlights, clutching this sleek black iPhone I'd never seen before. "I found it in Daddy's car when he was packing. It was under the seat." My brain started working overtime. Derek was obsessive about his phone. The man slept with it under his pillow, for crying out loud. There's no way he'd just leave one behind unless... "Can I see that, honey?" Ethan handed it over without question. Bless his innocent little heart. The phone was still buzzing with notifications, and I could see text messages popping up on the lock screen. The name at the top made my blood run cold. Baby girl. Now, I'm no rocket scientist, but I'm also not stupid. Derek used to call me babe on a good day, usually just Becca. He'd never called me baby girl in his entire life. My hands were shaking as I swiped up, hoping against hope that maybe this phone wasn't even his. Maybe Ethan found some random person's phone, and I was about to invade a stranger's privacy. But no such luck. The wallpaper was a photo of Derek at some fancy restaurant I'd never been to, arm around a gorgeous blonde who definitely wasn't me. She looked like she was maybe 25, with perfect teeth and the kind of body that screamed personal trainer, and never carried a baby for 9 months. "Mommy, why do you look funny?" Ethan's voice seemed to come from a million miles away. I realized I was probably making the same face people make right before they puke. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Why don't you go finish your homework?" As soon as Ethan left the room, I dove into that phone like it held the secrets to the universe. And boy, did it ever. The text messages were like reading some trashy romance novel, except this was my actual life imploding in real time. Messages going back months, between Derek and this Amber chick. Photos I definitely didn't want to see. Plans for weekend getaways while I thought he was working late. Hotel reservations. Jewelry purchases that sure as hell never made it home to me. But the absolute worst part? The messages about Ethan and me. Can't wait till this divorce is final and I can finally be free of the ball and chain and her bratty kid. The kid's not even that cute, TBH. Takes after his mom, LOL. Once I get rid of the dead weight, we can start our real life together. I'm sitting there reading these messages, and it's like watching my marriage get autopsied in real time. Every lie, every fake smile, every time he said he loved us, it was all just him counting down the days until he could trade us in for a younger model. The really sick part? There were messages from the morning he left us. While I was upstairs crying my eyes out and trying to figure out how to explain to Ethan why Daddy wasn't coming home, Derek was texting his side piece about how free he felt. But then I found something that made my mama bear instincts go into full attack mode. Messages about hiding assets, moving money around, making sure I couldn't get my hands on anything in the divorce. This son of a bitch was planning to leave us homeless while he sailed off into the sunset with Barbie. "Not if I have anything to say about it," I whispered to that empty kitchen. I took screenshots of everything. Every message, every photo, every receipt. My phone was working overtime, but I didn't care. This was evidence, and it was going to save our asses. The best part? Derek had no clue he'd left behind the smoking gun that was going to blow up his whole strategy. I spent the next 2 days basically becoming a private investigator in my own life. While Ethan was at school, I was glued to Derek's secret phone, documenting every dirty detail of his double life. The man had been living like some kind of bachelor while coming home to play house with us. Amber wasn't just some random hookup either. This girl had her claws in deep. Messages showed she knew all about me and Ethan, and she was actively encouraging Derek to screw us over in the divorce. "Why should you pay for a kid that's just going to hate you anyway?" she'd texted. Real classy, right? But here's the thing about cheaters. They get sloppy when they think they're smarter than everyone else. Derek's messages weren't just about the affair. They were about money. Lots of money. Turns out, Mr. Hotshot real estate developer had been hiding income for months, maybe years. Offshore accounts, shell companies, properties I didn't even know existed. The man who'd been crying poor and telling me we needed to tighten our belts had been sitting on a fortune this whole time. I found messages between Derek and his business partner, Mike, about funneling money through fake companies to keep it away from the wife when the divorce went through. They were planning to make it look like Derek was barely scraping by while he was actually rolling in dough. "This is insane," I said to my reflection in the bathroom mirror. I looked like hell, hadn't slept properly in days, surviving on coffee and pure rage, but my mind had never been clearer. I needed a lawyer, but not just any lawyer. I needed someone who could go toe-to-toe with Derek's good old boys club and win. The problem was, Derek wasn't lying when he said he knew every attorney in town. Scottsdale isn't that big, and the legal community here is tight-knit. That's when I remembered my college roommate, Maria Gonzalez. We'd lost touch over the years, but last I heard she was killing it as a divorce attorney up in Flagstaff. More importantly, she was mean as a snake when she needed to be, and she had zero connections to Derek's little network. "Rebecca Hayes." Maria's voice came through the phone like music to my ears. "Girl, what's it been? 10 years? Something like that? Listen, Maria, I need help, and I need it bad." I gave her the Cliff Notes version: cheating husband, hidden assets, attempting to screw me and my kid over. What I didn't mention was the secret phone. That was going to be my ace in the hole. "Honey, I've heard this story 1,000 times. These rich boys think they can just waltz away from their responsibilities because they've got money and connections. How much evidence do you have?" I looked down at Derek's phone, still buzzing with new messages from Amber. "Let's just say I hit the jackpot. Pack your bags, Rebecca. You're coming to Flagstaff, and we're going to war." 3 days later, I was sitting in Maria's office, watching her face go through about 15 different emotions as she scrolled through Derek's messages. Ethan was at my mom's house in Tucson. I'd told him we were going on a little adventure, which wasn't technically a lie. Jesus Christ, Rebecca. This isn't just adultery, this is fraud. Criminal fraud. Your husband has been systematically hiding marital assets. We're talking serious federal crimes here. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might explode. So what does that mean? It means we don't just win this divorce. We bury him. He'll be lucky if he doesn't end up in prison. Maria started laying out the battle plan. We'd file for divorce in Coconino County instead of Maricopa, which would throw off Derek's home field advantage. We'd demand emergency financial disclosure, which would force him to reveal assets he didn't even know we knew about. And the pièce de résistance, we'd subpoena his business records and expose the whole money laundering scheme. "But here's the thing," Maria said, leaning back in her leather chair. "This phone is inadmissible as evidence if we obtained it illegally." My heart sank. "So all of this is useless?" "I didn't say that. We can't use the phone directly, but we can use the information to know where to look. Every transaction he mentions, every account, every property, we'll find it through legal discovery. This phone is our roadmap." "And what about the affair?" Maria grinned like a shark. "Oh, honey, adultery might not matter much for property division in Arizona, but it sure as hell matters for custody and spousal support, especially when the other woman is encouraging him to abandon his child." We spent the next 6 hours going through every message, every photo, every receipt. Maria's paralegal was typing notes faster than a court reporter. By the time we were done, we had enough ammunition to blow Derek's life to smithereens. "One more thing," Maria said as I was getting ready to leave. "Your son, how's he handling all this?" I thought about Ethan, asking every night when Daddy was coming home, not understanding why our whole world had changed overnight. He's confused, hurt. He keeps blaming himself. Kids are resilient, but they're also smart. Don't underestimate what he's picking up on. And Rebecca, when this goes to court, things are going to get ugly. Derek's going to fight dirty, and he might try to use Ethan as a weapon. You need to be prepared for that. I nodded, but honestly, I had no idea how ugly things were about to get, or how my little boy was going to end up being the one to deliver the knockout punch. Derek's reaction when he got served with divorce papers was exactly what you'd expect from a narcissist who thought he was untouchable. He called me screaming, using words I can't repeat in polite company, accusing me of being a vindictive bitch, and threatening to make sure I'd never see a dime of his money. What he didn't expect was for me to have Maria on speed dial. "Let me talk to him," she said, when Derek called for the third time in an hour, ranting about how I'd poisoned his son against him, and how he was going to destroy me in court. I put the phone on speaker and just listened, as Maria calmly explained to Derek that continued harassment would result in a restraining order, and that any attempts to intimidate me would be presented as evidence of his character to the judge. The silence that followed was golden. But Derek wasn't going down without a fight. Within a week, I was served with counterpapers that made my original divorce petition look like a friendly suggestion. He was demanding full custody of Ethan, claiming I was an unfit mother who had mental health issues and was alienating the child from his father. The bastard was also claiming that I'd been having an affair, complete fiction, but hey, projection much? And that the marriage had failed because of my inability to fulfill my wifely duties. I'm not ashamed to admit I cried when I read those papers. Not because I was scared, okay, maybe a little scared, but because I was so damn angry I didn't know what to do with myself. This was the man who'd held my hand in the delivery room when Ethan was born. The man who'd promised to love me in sickness and in health. And now he was trying to paint me as some kind of unstable monster. "He's escalating because he's scared," Maria explained during one of our strategy sessions. "Men like Derek are used to being in control. When they realize they're not, they lash out. But here's the thing. Everything he's accusing you of, we can disprove. Everything we're accusing him of, we can prove." The discovery process was like Christmas morning for Maria and her team. Every bank record Derek was forced to turn over revealed more hidden assets. Every business document exposed more fraud. The man had been living a complete double life, and now it was all coming out in black and white. Meanwhile, I was trying to keep things normal for Ethan, which was about as easy as juggling fire while riding a unicycle. The poor kid knew something was seriously wrong, but he was only 8. How do you explain to your child that his father is a lying, cheating fraud without completely destroying his world? Derek wasn't making it easier. His visitation calls with Ethan were awkward and stilted, like he was talking to a stranger instead of his son. He'd ask about school and sports, but you could tell his heart wasn't in it. And when Ethan would ask when Daddy was coming home, Derek would just change the subject. "Mom, does Dad not love us anymore?" Ethan asked one night as I was tucking him into bed. I wanted to lie, to protect him, to say that Daddy loved him very much, but sometimes grown-ups had problems they couldn't fix. But looking into those brown eyes that looked so much like Derek's, I realized my son deserved better than pretty lies. "Baby, your dad is going through some things right now that don't have anything to do with you. You are the most amazing, lovable, wonderful kid in the whole world, and that will never change, no matter what happens between me and Daddy. But if I was a better kid, maybe Daddy wouldn't have left." And there it was, the guilt that Derek's selfishness had planted in my child's heart. That's when I knew this wasn't just about money or assets or who got what in the divorce. This was about protecting my son from the kind of psychological damage that could follow him for the rest of his life. "Ethan Hayes, you listen to me," I said, sitting down on his bed and taking his little face in my hands. "Nothing that's happening is your fault. You are perfect exactly the way you are. This is about grown-up problems that have nothing to do with you." But even as I said it, I knew Derek's abandonment was going to leave scars. The man who was supposed to be Ethan's hero had basically thrown him away like garbage. What kind of father does that to his own child? The kind of father who texts his girlfriend about how his kid is not even that cute and takes after his mom. The kind of father who sees his son as an inconvenience rather than a blessing. 2 months into the divorce proceedings, Derek made his biggest mistake yet. He decided to take Ethan for a weekend visit, his first overnight since he'd left us. I was nervous about it, but Maria said it would look bad if I tried to interfere with his parental rights, especially since he hadn't done anything to Ethan directly. Ethan came home from that weekend different, quieter, more withdrawn. When I asked him how it went, he just shrugged and said, "Fine," but I could tell something had happened. It took 3 days of gentle prodding before the truth came out. "Mommy, Daddy has a new friend." My blood ran cold. "What kind of friend, baby?" "A lady friend. She was at his apartment when I got there. She's really pretty and young, and she kept calling Daddy honey and stuff." Derek had introduced Ethan to Amber. The woman who'd been encouraging him to abandon his son had now met that same son face to face. I was so angry I could barely see straight. "Did the lady say anything to you?" Ethan nodded, and I could see tears starting to form in his eyes. "She asked Daddy if I was staying long because they had plans. And then she said I looked just like you, and not in a nice way. That bitch had insulted my child to his face. In that moment, I wanted to drive straight to Derek's apartment and commit several felonies. But then Ethan said something that changed everything. Mom, I think Daddy forgot his phone at the apartment. The same one he used to let me play games on sometimes. I know where he hides it." And just like that, my 8-year-old son had just handed me the key to winning this war. You know that feeling when you're putting together a jigsaw puzzle and suddenly you find the piece that makes everything else click into place? That's exactly what happened when Ethan told me about Derek's hidden phone. See, I'd been wondering how Derek could be so stupid as to leave incriminating evidence lying around. Turns out, he hadn't been careless at all. The phone Ethan found in Derek's car wasn't Derek's main phone. It was his burner phone, the one he used exclusively for his affair and his shady business dealings, the one he thought was safely hidden away from prying eyes. But kids notice everything, don't they? While Derek thought he was being so clever, conducting his secret life, Ethan had been watching. Kids are like little sponges, soaking up all the details adults think they're hiding. "Tell me about this phone, sweetie," I said, trying to keep my voice casual while my heart was pounding like a drum. "Well, Daddy always kept it in his nightstand at the old house, but I saw him put it under his car seat when he was packing. And at his new apartment, he keeps it in this drawer in the kitchen. But he doesn't think I saw him put it there. Smart kid, takes after his mom. And you're sure it's the same phone?" "Yeah, it has this blue case with a crack on the corner. I remember because I asked Daddy about it once and he got really mad and told me not to touch it." The wheels in my head were spinning faster than a casino slot machine. If Derek was still using that phone, and based on the recent messages I'd seen, he definitely was, then all his current communications with Amber and his business partners were right there, just waiting to be discovered legally. "Ethan, this is really important. When you were at Daddy's apartment, did you see him use that phone?" "Yeah. He was texting on it while I was eating breakfast. And the lady, Amber, she was looking at it too and laughing about something. Bingo. They were actively using the phone to discuss God knows what, probably including more plans to screw me over in the divorce. I called Maria immediately. "So let me get this straight," she said after I explained the situation. "Derek has been using a second phone to conduct his affair and his financial crimes. And your son knows where it is?" "That's right. And Maria, there's something else. Derek took Ethan to his apartment for the weekend, and Amber was there. She made nasty comments about Ethan to his face. I could hear Maria's pen scratching across paper. That's parental alienation. Exposing the child to the affair partner in an inappropriate setting, allowing that person to make derogatory comments about the child or the other parent. That's all evidence of poor judgment and potentially harmful behavior. So what do? We get that phone. Legally." Maria explained that during the discovery phase of the divorce, we could request all electronic devices and communications. Since Derek had already been caught hiding assets, the judge would likely order him to turn over any phones, computers, or other devices he'd been using. "But here's the beautiful part," Maria continued. "If he lies about the existence of the phone, or forgets to turn it over, and we can prove he has it, that's contempt of court and perjury. We bury him." The next few weeks were a delicate balancing act. I had to pretend I didn't know about the phone while Maria worked on getting a court order for discovery of all electronic devices. I also had to continue allowing Derek's visitation with Ethan, even though every fiber of my being wanted to protect my son from being exposed to that toxic environment. But Ethan, bless his heart, had become my little spy without even realizing it. He'd come home from visits and casually mention things Derek and Amber had said, places they'd gone, things they'd done. He wasn't trying to get his father in trouble. He was just sharing his experiences with his mom, the way kids do. "They went to look at this really big house," he told me after one visit. "Amber said it was going to be their house when Daddy's divorce was finished. She said it had a pool and everything, but no room for kids because they weren't planning on having any." More evidence of hidden assets and future planning. Derek was already shopping for his post-divorce love nest while crying poor to the court. Did Daddy say anything about the house? He said he was paying cash for it because he didn't want banks involved. Then Amber said something about how smart he was for moving his money around so you couldn't get it. Out of the mouths of babes, right? My 8-year-old was inadvertently documenting Derek's entire financial fraud scheme. The breakthrough came during Derek's deposition. Maria had been grilling him about his finances for hours, going through every bank account, every property, every business deal. Derek was getting more and more agitated, especially when Maria started asking about communications with his business partners. Mr. Hayes, have you provided all electronic devices and communication records as requested by the court? Yes, I've given you everything. So you only have one cell phone? Derek paused for just a second too long. That's correct. And you've never used any other phones to conduct business or personal communications during the time period specified in the discovery request? No, just my main phone. Maria smiled like a cat who'd just spotted a mouse. Your Honor, I'd like to request permission to question the minor child in chambers about what he observed during his visits with his father. Derek's lawyer objected, of course, but the judge was already suspicious about Derek's evasive answers regarding his finances. When there's potential fraud involved, courts tend to be pretty thorough about discovery. That's how we ended up in the judge's chambers a week later. Me, Derek, our lawyers, the judge, and my brave little boy who had no idea he was about to drop a bombshell that would change everything. Judge Patricia Morrison had been on the bench for 23 years, and I could tell she'd seen it all. Her chambers were warm but professional, with family photos on her desk and law books lining the walls. She had a gentle way about her that immediately put Ethan at ease, which was exactly what my nervous little boy needed. Hi there, Ethan. I'm Judge Morrison, but you can call me Judge Patty if that's easier. I just want to ask you a few questions about your visits with your dad. Is that okay? Ethan nodded, clutching the small toy dinosaur I'd let him bring for comfort. Derek was sitting across from us, and I could see the tension in his shoulders. He knew this was dangerous territory, but he couldn't exactly object to his own son testifying about what he'd witnessed. Now, Ethan, when you visit your dad at his new place, is there anyone else there with you? Sometimes. There's this lady named Amber. She's there a lot. Judge Morrison made a note. And how does Amber treat you? Ethan looked down at his dinosaur. She's not very nice. She told Daddy I look just like my mom, and she didn't say it like it was a good thing, and she always acts like I'm bothering them when I'm there. I wanted to reach over and hug my little boy, but Maria had warned me not to interfere during the questioning. I see. Ethan, have you ever seen your dad use a phone that's different from his regular phone? You mean the blue one? The temperature in the room dropped about 10 degrees. Derek went completely rigid, and his lawyer started frantically scribbling notes. Can you tell me about the blue phone, Ethan? Well, Daddy has his regular phone that he always uses, but he also has this other one with a blue case that has a crack on the corner. He tries to hide it, but I've seen him use it lots of times. When does he use the blue phone? Usually when he's texting with Amber, or when he's talking to Uncle Mike about work stuff. Sometimes he gets mad when it makes noise and tells me not to touch it. Judge Morrison looked at Derek with raised eyebrows. Mr. Hayes, would you like to revise your previous testimony about only having one phone? Derek's lawyer whispered something in his ear, but Derek shook his head. Your Honor, I may have forgotten about an old work phone, but it's not relevant to these proceedings. I'll be the judge of what's relevant, Mr. Hayes. Ethan, do you remember where your dad keeps this blue phone? At his apartment. He keeps it in the kitchen drawer, the one next to the refrigerator. And in his car, he usually puts it under the driver's seat. And you've seen him using this phone recently? Yeah, last weekend when I was there. He and Amber were looking at it and laughing about something. Amber said something about Mom not being smart enough to figure out what they were doing. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. This woman was discussing me, planning against me right in front of my child. But Judge Morrison's expression told me she was just as disgusted as I was. Ethan, have you ever heard your dad or Amber talk about money or houses or anything like that? Oh yeah, all the time. They went to look at this huge house, and Amber said it was going to be their house when the divorce was done. Daddy said he was buying it with cash so the banks wouldn't know about it, and Amber said something about how he was smart for moving his money around so Mom couldn't get any of it. Derek's face had gone from red to white to green. His lawyer was furiously taking notes, probably trying to figure out how to do damage control on what was turning into a complete disaster. One more question, Ethan. How do you feel when you're at your dad's apartment? My little boy's eyes filled with tears. Sad. It doesn't feel like he really wants me there. Amber is always making faces when I talk, and Daddy seems different, like he doesn't really care about me anymore. Sometimes I hear them talking about how much easier things would be if I wasn't around. That's when I lost it. Tears were streaming down my face, and I didn't care who saw them. This sweet, innocent child had been forced to listen to his father, and that woman discuss him like he was some kind of inconvenience. Judge Morrison handed Ethan a tissue and gently told him he'd been very helpful and very brave. After Ethan left the chambers with the court clerk, she turned to Derek with fire in her eyes. "Mr. Hayes, I'm going to ask you one more time, under oath, with the threat of perjury charges hanging over your head. Do you currently possess any electronic devices that you have not disclosed to this court?" Derek's lawyer tried to intervene, but Derek cut him off. "Yes, Your Honor. I have a second phone that I use for business purposes. And where is this phone currently?" "At my apartment." "You will surrender that device to the court within 24 hours, along with any passwords or access codes. Any attempt to destroy or alter evidence will result in contempt charges and possible criminal referral." Maria was practically glowing. "Your Honor, we'd also like to request an emergency hearing regarding custodial arrangements, given the testimony about the inappropriate exposure of the minor child to the affair partner and discussions about the divorce proceedings." "Granted. We'll reconvene tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Mr. Hayes, I strongly suggest you use the next 24 hours to think very carefully about your choices, both as a father and as a party to these proceedings." As we left the courthouse, Derek tried to approach me. "Becca, we need to talk. This has gotten out of hand." I looked at this man who'd shared my bed for 12 years, who'd helped me create the most precious thing in my life, who'd thrown us away like garbage for a younger woman and a fatter bank account. "The only thing out of hand here is your behavior, Derek. You made your choice when you walked out on us. Now you get to live with the consequences." But the real consequences were just beginning. Because that blue phone Derek was about to hand over, it contained messages that were going to expose not just his affair and financial fraud, but something much worse. Evidence that he'd been planning this whole thing for over 2 years, methodically moving assets and building his exit strategy while lying to my face every single day. The next morning's hearing was standing room only. Word had gotten out about Derek's testimony disaster, and half the legal community and Flagstaff showed up to watch what everyone expected to be a spectacular courtroom meltdown. They weren't disappointed. Derek's blue phone had been a treasure trove of evidence that made my original discoveries look like child's play. The forensic accountant Maria had hired spent all night going through the messages, and what she found was staggering. "Your Honor," Maria began, "what we have here isn't just marital infidelity or even simple asset hiding. This is a deliberate, calculated scheme spanning over 2 years to defraud Mrs. Hayes and their minor child of their rightful marital property." She handed a thick folder to Judge Morrison, and another to Derek's increasingly pale attorney. "The evidence shows that Mr. Hayes began planning this divorce before he even told his wife he wanted to leave. Messages dating back 26 months show him discussing with his business partner how to move assets offshore, how to undervalue properties, and how to make his income appear lower than it actually is." I watched Derek sink lower and lower in his chair as Maria laid out the scope of his deception. "But it gets worse, Your Honor. Mr. Hayes didn't just plan to cheat his family out of money. He planned to destroy Mrs. Hayes' reputation and parental rights. Messages between Mr. Hayes and Ms. Amber Sinclair show them discussing ways to make Mrs. Hayes appear unstable, including plans to provoke arguments, document her emotional responses, and use those incidents to claim she was an unfit mother. The judge was reading through the messages, and her expression was getting darker by the minute. "Mr. Hayes, it says here that you texted Ms. Sinclair, and I quote, 'The plan is working perfectly. Becca's falling apart just like we expected. A few more months of this, and I'll have grounds to claim she's mentally unstable and get full custody. Then we won't have to pay child support.' End quote. Did you send this message?" Derek's lawyer whispered frantically in his ear, but Derek just sat there like a statue. "Mr. Hayes, I asked you a question." "Yes, Your Honor." The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Judge Morrison banged her gavel for silence. "So you deliberately attempted to psychologically manipulate your wife, the mother of your child, in order to gain an advantage in divorce proceedings." "Your Honor, I can explain." "I'm sure you can. But first, let's continue with the evidence. Mrs. Gonzalez?" Maria was just getting warmed up. "Your Honor, the messages also reveal that Mr. Hayes has been systematically poisoning his relationship with his son in order to make abandoning the child appear justified." She read from the phone. "Kid keeps asking when I'm coming home. It's annoying as hell. Can't wait until this custody thing is settled and I only have to see him twice a month. And then, honestly, I don't think I even want partial custody. The kid is too much like Becca, whiny and clingy. Maybe I should just sign away my rights and be done with it." I felt physically sick. My poor little boy had been right. His father really didn't want him anymore. But to see it in writing, To see Derek discussing abandoning his child like he was returning a defective appliance was heartbreaking beyond words. But perhaps most disturbing, Your Honor, are the messages between Mr. Hayes and Ms. Sinclair regarding the child himself. Maria's voice was ice cold as she read, Amber, when are you going to tell the brat that he's not welcome in our new life? Derek, soon as the papers are signed. I never wanted kids anyway. This whole daddy thing was just an act to keep Becca happy. Judge Morrison looked like she wanted to throw something. Mr. Hayes, do you have anything to say for yourself? Derek finally found his voice. Your Honor, those messages were taken out of context. I was angry and frustrated. You didn't mean to plan a 2-year campaign of financial fraud and psychological abuse against your wife and child? You didn't mean to conspire with your affair partner to destroy your family's financial security and emotional well-being? Derek's lawyer stood up. Your Honor, my client may have made some poor choices in his personal communications, but poor choices? Judge Morrison's voice could have cut glass. Counsel, your client has committed multiple felonies: wire fraud, money laundering, perjury, contempt of court, and conspiracy to commit fraud. This isn't poor judgment. This is criminal behavior. She turned back to Derek. Mr. Hayes, I've been on this bench for over 2 decades, and I have never seen such a deliberate, calculated attempt to destroy a family. You haven't just betrayed your wife and child. You've made a mockery of this court and the legal system. Derek tried one last time. Your Honor, I just want what's fair. Fair. Judge Morrison's laugh was bitter. Let me tell you what's fair, Mr. Hayes. Fair is that your wife gets every penny of the marital assets you tried to hide. Fair is that you pay substantial alimony and child support. Fair is that your custody rights are severely restricted until you can prove you're capable of putting your child's well-being above your own selfish desires. She shuffled through the papers on her desk. As of right now, Mrs. Hayes is awarded full physical and legal custody of Ethan Hayes. Mr. Hayes, you are granted supervised visitation only, pending a psychological evaluation and completion of a parenting class. Derek shot to his feet. You can't do this. He's my son. Sit down, Mr. Hayes, or I'll have you removed from my courtroom. Your son is a child who deserves better than a father who views him as an inconvenience and discusses abandoning him with his affair partner. But the judge wasn't done. Regarding financial matters, all assets hidden by Mr. Hayes are to be returned to the marital estate immediately. Mrs. Hayes is awarded the family home, 70% of all marital assets, and substantial spousal support. Mr. Hayes will also pay all legal fees incurred by Mrs. Hayes in uncovering his fraudulent behavior. I was trying not to cry, but tears of relief were streaming down my face. My little boy was going to be okay. We were going to be okay. Furthermore, Judge Morrison continued, I am referring this case to the district attorney's office for potential criminal prosecution. Mr. Hayes, you may want to consider retaining criminal counsel. Derek's face had gone completely white. His perfect plan had blown up spectacularly, and now he was facing not just losing everything in the divorce, but potential prison time. But perhaps most importantly, the judge said, her voice softening slightly, I want to commend young Ethan Hayes for his bravery and honesty in this proceeding. It takes tremendous courage for a child to tell the truth when it involves a parent, and his testimony has ensured that justice was served. As we left the courthouse, Derek made one last desperate attempt to approach us. Becca, please. Can we talk? Maybe we can work something out. I looked at this man who had systematically tried to destroy me and my child, who had planned for years to leave us with nothing, while he sailed off into the sunset with his mistress. There's nothing to work out, Derek. You made your choice when you decided we were disposable. Now you get to live with the consequences. Maria put her arm around my shoulders as we walked to her car. How does it feel to win, Rebecca? I looked back at Derek, standing alone on the courthouse steps, his lawyer frantically making phone calls, probably trying to figure out how to keep him out of prison. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. It doesn't feel like winning, I said honestly. It feels like justice. 6 months later, I'm sitting in my kitchen, the same kitchen where Derek told me he was done with us, but everything is different now. The house is ours, free and clear. The bills are paid. Ethan is thriving in therapy and doing amazing in school. And me? I'm finally starting to feel like myself again. Derek ended up pleading guilty to federal fraud charges and got 18 months in minimum security prison. His business partnership with Mike collapsed when the FBI started investigating their offshore accounts. Amber disappeared faster than morning dew when she realized Derek's money was gone and he was facing prison time. Guess love doesn't conquer all when your sugar daddy becomes your cell daddy. The best part? Ethan doesn't ask about his father anymore. Not because he's forgotten him, but because he's finally started to heal from the emotional damage Derek caused. His therapist says it might take years to fully process the abandonment, but kids are resilient, and Ethan is stronger than I ever imagined. "Mom, can I tell you something?" Ethan said one evening as I was tucking him into bed. "Of course, baby. You can tell me anything. I'm glad Dad left." My heart stopped for a second. "Why, sweetie?" "Because now I know what it feels like to have a parent who actually wants me around. And I learned that families don't have to be perfect to be happy." Jesus, when did my 8-year-old become so wise? "You know what, Ethan? You're absolutely right. We're better off without someone who couldn't see how amazing you are. Plus," he grinned, "now I don't have to pretend to like golf anymore." We both started laughing, and for the first time in months, it felt like everything was going to be okay. I won't lie. Some days are still hard. Single motherhood isn't easy, and there are moments when I feel overwhelmed by the responsibility of raising Ethan alone. But then I remember what the alternative was, staying married to a man who saw us as obstacles to his happiness, who was willing to destroy us to get what he wanted. The settlement money allowed me to go back to school and finish my nursing degree, something I'd put on hold when Ethan was born. It feels good to have goals again, to be building something for our future instead of just surviving day to day. Maria and I have become close friends through all this. She says my case was one of the most satisfying wins of her career, not because of the money, but because it proved that sometimes the good guys really do win. "You know what the best part was?" she told me over coffee last week. "Watching that little boy find his voice and tell his truth. Ethan saved himself as much as he saved you." She's right. My son's honesty and bravery didn't just expose Derek's lies. It taught both of us that we deserved better than someone who would treat us like we were disposable. Derek sent a letter from prison last month, asking if he could write to Ethan. I threw it in the trash without opening it. Maybe someday, when Ethan is older, he'll want to have a relationship with his father. That will be his choice to make. But right now, my job is to protect him from people who would hurt him, even if one of those people happens to share his DNA. The house feels different now, lighter somehow. We painted over Derek's old office and turned it into a playroom for Ethan. We got a new dog, a rescue named Luna, who follows Ethan everywhere and sleeps at the foot of his bed. We have movie nights and pizza parties and Saturday morning pancake competitions. We're building new traditions, new memories, a new life that doesn't have room for people who don't truly want to be part of it. Sometimes I think about that Tuesday morning when Derek packed his suitcase and told me he was done. At the time, it felt like the end of the world. Now I realize it was actually the beginning of our real life, the life we were meant to have all along. And you know what? We're not just surviving, we're thriving. So to anyone out there who's going through something similar, who feels like their world is falling apart because someone they trusted betrayed them, I want you to remember this. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you turns out to be the best thing that could have happened. Sometimes losing someone who doesn't value you makes room for the life you actually deserve. Derek thought he was so smart, so clever with his secret phones and hidden assets and elaborate plans. But he forgot one important thing. The truth always comes out eventually. And when it does, you better hope you're on the right side of it. My son taught me that even at 8 years old, he knew his worth. He knew he deserved a parent who loved him unconditionally, who wanted him around, who wouldn't trade him for anything. And he was brave enough to speak up when that wasn't what he was getting. That's a lesson I'll carry with me for the rest of my life. Thanks for sticking with our story to the end. If this touched your heart or reminded you that justice really can prevail, please hit that like button, drop a comment about your own experiences, or just to let me know where you're watching from. And don't forget to follow for more real-life stories that prove truth really is stranger than fiction. Remember, you're stronger than you think, and you deserve people in your life who see your worth. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.